By Doug Yurchey. There are readers out there who would be surprised or offended with the notion that high technology was described in the Bible. There are other readers who have realized that the only explanations to biblical mysteries are ancient close encounters. Ad Namid Sense 160 by 600_orange. A good question is why are certain Old Testament events written about in the Bible? The answer could be that these were special events between basically two groups of people. One group was the primitives, or the general state of humanity in biblical times. The other group was the relatively few humans that still retained and utilized technology originating from the days of Atlantis. When angels made an appearance, they were always human. Those who caused the Great Flood gave Moses the instructions on building the Ark of the Covenant and warned Lot, then destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, were human beings. But these people had advanced knowledge and flew chariots in the sky. They resided on the tops of mountains well away from the simple world of Bible prophets in the lowlands. The most amazing example of an Old Testament close encounter is the book of Ezekiel. Read the beginning of chapter 1 in the King James Bible Editor's Note. Read it at the end of this page. CPS Ezekiel 11:28. Only imagine that it is a UFO landing. With this idea in mind, Ezekiel's experience is almost understandable. Ezekiel's book was so controversial that it nearly did not survive the religious editors who did throw out the Book of Enoch. The Spaceships of Ezekiel by Blumrich is an award-winning book that should be read by anyone investigating biblical mysteries. Blumrich is a scientist and NASA designer of the Saturn V rocket. He wrote that his son informed him, after reading an Erich von Daniken book, that the prophet Ezekiel described a spaceship landing. Blumrich was positive that he could disprove that concept because of his technical skills in this field. The ancient text could not possibly portray a feasible craft, he assumed. The NASA designer wrote that he was never so surprised when he actually read the book of Ezekiel. The ancient words did indeed conform to a realistic vehicle. In the beginning of Ezekiel, the prophet wrote of the approach of four faces from above. In reality, the four referred to the landing legs of the craft. Blumrich was shocked when he read the Old Testament report of straight legs of burnished brass with round feet. The NASA scientist himself designed the metallic, straight legs and round foot pads of the lunar lander. The famous quote from Ezekiel is "a wheel within a wheel." Once the lander touched down, Ezekiel saw wheels. This is the exact chronology of what would occur with a modern vehicle. The UFO landed, transformed into a wheeled rover, then rolled along the ground. Ezekiel was only familiar with wheels from simple carts that moved in one direction. But the prophet described wheels that moved in all directions, which was completely alien to Ezekiel. Enoch was Methuselah's father and Noah's grandfather. His book should be in the Old Testament. It has surfaced from independent sources which validate the ancient text. The Book of Enoch was edited out of the Bible by the Ecumenical Council for its controversies. Enoch, like Ezekiel, was taken on many flights by the gods' angels and witnessed great horrors and beauty. 393. A whirlwind carried me off from the earth. There are numerous references to whirlwinds which spirited Enoch away into the sky. The angels showed me all the hidden things, and mine eyes saw all the secret things of heaven. Enoch saw views that no man shall see. In 334, Enoch states, I saw a great and glorious device. 322 And thence I went over the summits of the earth, and passed above the Erythraean Sea, and went far from it, and passed over the angels Otiel, another ship. 141819 I looked and saw a lofty throne, its appearance was as crystal, and the wheels thereof as the shining sun. From underneath the throne came streams of flaming fire so great that I could not look thereon. Enoch mentions crystals and wheels. The throne could be a vehicle where the angels sat, and underneath were fires from the rocket thrusters. The vision caused me to fly and lifted me upward and bore me into heaven. There are numerous references to portals or windows where earthly and celestial views appeared. 332 Portals of the heaven open. 3. And I saw how the stars of heaven come forth. The Book of Enoch speaks of much destruction, chaos and corruption on earth as well as among the angels. Like Genesis, Enoch mentions giants and the watchers. There were the Satans, the sons of heaven, angels of punishment, instruments of Satan, and the same specific Genesis angels Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, etc. God is never mentioned, only plural gods or angels. Enoch was taken to the mountaintops where the gods resided. He observed things that no primitive could understand. The angels corrupted the sons of man. It was these various humans, with the technology, that played God and decided the fate of the children on earth. The main reason Enoch's book was deemed heresy and taken out of the Old Testament could have been the accurate astronomy. Page after page concerns the sun, moon, yearly cycles and heavenly statistics. Paths of the sun and moon, their stately orbits, courses of the luminaries and revolve in their circular chariots are only a few quotes of Enochian wisdom. 758 And I saw in the heaven running in the world, above those portals in which revolve the stars that never set. Only from space are there stars that never set. Remember, the Church during the time of ecumenical editing condemned accurate astronomy. Ask Galileo. Religious officials wanted the public to think that the earth was flat, did not move and was in the center of all things. During these ancient times, there were mad scientists and demons who cloned anything they wanted. The mythological animals were real, they were genetic experiments. Also, wars of the gods occurred. Nuclear warfare was not beyond the capability of the angels. Robert Oppenheimer, creator of modern atomics and a student of early books of India, knew that nuclear wars happened in the old world. The deserts of today are the result of ancient, atomic wars. Assuming that these conclusions are true, the Great Flood was probably green-lighted by good gods who wanted to reduce high radiation levels. Also, the perverted creatures and their power-crazed genetic engineers needed to be eliminated on a global scale. The earth was a mess and needed to be wiped clean. There was a great flood that covered all of the land. Seashells were found on top of Mount Everest. There is water erosion on the Sphinx. All land is a sedimentary deposit. Many Noahs sailed during Waterworld. The Chinese have their old stories of an ark and a great deluge. Numerous Indian cultures have the legends of a flood, a Noah and an ark. Most people do not believe in the biblical story of Noah because of a basic problem: how could a few people gather all the animals, feed and care for them on board a ship for months? The answer comes from who controlled the earth thousands of years ago. The angels, the humans with the technology, built the arks, collected the animals and caused the rains. The chosen animals were probably the best examples of their species and worthy of being saved. It is scientifically possible to place a life form in suspended animation reduced down to its DNA. This was the cargo within the arks. The samples of DNA would be revived later, after the waters receded. Nowhere in the Bible does it mention that Noah went out and gathered each animal. It only says Noah brought them into the ark. If the life canisters were all assembled for the Noahs by the gods and the simple people merely carried them in and secured them in place, then this does explain the Noah story. The world began again. In Genesis, it says that after the flood Noah went to live with the gods. This was one of the few plural references that survived the editors of the Bible. The reference gods was later changed to the singular God. The simplified term was changed to accommodate a world that had become extremely simple. Atlantis was Eden. Compare these two legends. Each was our mother civilization, or the place where we originated. Each was a paradise. Each fell and mankind had to leave in disgrace. It is not far-fetched how the people of Earth could divide itself into two races, a simple one and a complex one. If a nuclear war happened today, the survivors would continue in tribal communities. After generations, they would forget what technology was. But the few who knew of the coming nuclear devastation and even caused it, would have protected themselves and be the few who still possess advanced knowledge. These gods could deal with the numerous primitives as they saw fit. This concept is ancient history. The Genesis story of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah is not a mystery when you plug in the idea of a modern technology. How do two cities, realistically, get wiped off the face of the earth? The inhabitants of Hiroshima and Nagasaki may know the answer. 2. Human angels came into town and warned people of the coming destruction. 1917. To escape for thy life, look not behind thee, neither stay thou in all the plain, escape to the mountain, lest thou be consumed. 1924. Then the Lord rained upon Sodom and Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Lord out of heaven. 1926. But his wife looked back from behind, and she became a pillar of salt. 1928. The smoke of the country went up as the smoke of a furnace. 1930. Lot feared to dwell in Zoar, and he dwelt in a cave, he and his 2 daughters. The angels directed Lot and his family to save their lives by running to the mountain. A landmass can protect one from a nuclear blast. The cities were consumed with brimstone and fire. This is a perfect description of a nuking. A mushroom cloud moving vertically could be the meaning of went up as the smoke of a furnace. Lot's wife did not make it, not because she looked back, but because she trailed behind the rest of her family. A primitive seeing an atomic explosion would be more than stunned. They would tend to stop in their tracks. Not looking back is good advice to those running for their lives. The pillar of salt could have come from finding her body later and discovering the effects of radiation. Finally, hiding in a cave because of the fallout until the land was ready for habitation is very logical. Genesis chapter 126. And God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness." 221. And the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept, and he took one of his ribs, and closed up the flesh. In Genesis chapter 126, there are important clues that the creation of Eve from Adam was not conducted by a singular God. In this one sentence, there are 3 plural references: us, our and our. This was a cloning operation observed by a primitive who did not understand. First, one of the technicians caused Adam to fall into a deep sleep. This was the anesthesia. Second, a cell must be taken from somewhere on the body to create another body. The rib area was where the cell was taken. They closed up the flesh is a modern expression describing the completion of the operation. Master cloners could quickly form an adult and change the sex from the original. The idea was illustrated in a Star Trek Next Generation episode where a primitive was brought back to life and mistook Captain Picard as a god. He prayed to the Picard and was later corrected. Before the Red Sea parted, there were 2 UFOs leading the people out of Egypt. Exodus chapter 1321. And the Lord went before them by day in a pillar of a cloud, to lead them away, and by night in a pillar of fire, to give them light to go by day and night. These objects in the sky could very well be spacecraft when you consider clouds of smoke by day and fire by night. Rocket thrusters could create billowing smoke in sunlight. But, at night, the flames from the propulsion systems would be what was mainly visible. These chariots in the air could have held back the waters of the Red Sea with force fields. Exodus chapter 1422. And the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea upon dry ground, and the waters were a wall on either side. With a flick of a switch, turning off the force field at the appropriate time, the waters returned, and covered the chariots of the Egyptians. All through Exodus, this Lord God demands that I am the Lord, and I will be to you a God, and ye shall know that I am the Lord, your God. In 153, there is a strange reference: the Lord is a man of war. This is curious because it says God is a man and not a very nice one. It is more like God is a big bully having power over people, pushing his weight around only because he has the ability to do so. There is a warning in 1912 to go not up into the mount, or touch the border of it. Whosoever toucheth the mount shall be surely put to death. This biblical God was not God. 1918. And Mount Sinai was altogether on a smoke, because the Lord descended upon it in fire, and the whole mount quaked greatly. In Exodus, Moses was given instructions on building the Ark of the Covenant. The inventive genius, Nikola Tesla, wrote in The Wall of Light that Moses had to have been a skilled electrical engineer. The Ark, Tesla concluded, was a very powerful condenser. It created intense vibrations that could smash solid stone. The Israelites carted the device into battle and won wars with it, not unlike the vibration weapons the Freemen used in the film Dune. I Samuel chapter 145. And when the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord came into the camp, all Israel shouted with a great shout. 48. Who shall deliver us out of the hand of these mighty gods? These are the gods that smote the Egyptians. In 2 Samuel chapter 667, a simple man named Uzzah disregarded warnings, touched the ark improperly and was electrocuted. Uzzah put forth his hand to the ark of God, and took hold of it, for the oxen shook it. And the anger of the Lord was kindled against Uzzah, and God smote him there for his error, and there he died by the ark of God. The man attempted to place it back on the ox-drawn cart and died. They had no concept of high voltage. 69. And David was afraid of the Lord that day. The story of Jericho is told in the book of Joshua. The actual site of Jericho was found. The stone walls were over 10 feet thick. What could bring down massive walls according to the Old Testament? It was the power of the Lord. Marching around the stone fort and blowing trumpets could not possibly shatter such walls. The Ark of the Covenant was there and responsible for tumbling down the walls of Jericho. There are numerous references to, again, a great shout. Jonah was taken aboard a submarine. But the prophets would not have that modern word, so the description became a great fish. How were the 10 Commandments cut into stone? The finger of God could have accomplished this if they were lasers. The burning bush may have been electric. The Virgin Mary could have been artificially inseminated. The biblical reports were not understood 500 years ago or even 100 years ago. It was only until the 20th century and its technology that we could finally understand what was really happening. There is evidence that our real prehistory was similar to science fiction. Most people either reject the Bible as nonsense or believe it is the absolute word of the Supreme Being. The Bible is the most amazing account of close encounters. The events were real, they happened, but the truth is extraordinary. Copyright 20,022,2012 by Doug Yurchey. Note from the editor: the Bible contains many descriptions that defy convincing explanation on the grounds of theology, but become comprehensible when interpreted in context of modern technology. Follow links below to unaltered quotations from the Bible and come to your own conclusions. Genesis, Exodus, Numbers, Nehemiah, King 12, Ezekiel, Daniel, Deuteronomy, Book of Enoch, The Watchers. Related links. PS Ezekiel 11:28-11. Now it came to pass in the 30th year, in the 4th month, on the 5th day of the month, when I was in the midst of the captives by the river Choba, the heavens were opened, and I saw the visions of God. 12. On the 5th day of the month, the same was the 5th year of the captivity of King Joachim. 13. The word of the Lord came to Ezekiel the priest, the son of Buzi, in the land of the Chaldeans, by the river Choba, and the hand of the Lord was there upon him. 14. And I saw, and behold, a whirlwind came out of the north, and a great cloud, and a fire enfolding it, and brightness was about it, and out of the midst thereof, that is, out of the midst of the fire, as it were the resemblance of amber. 15. And in the midst thereof the likeness of 4 living creatures, and this was their appearance, there was the likeness of a man in them. 16. Every one had 4 faces, and every one 4 wings. 17. Their feet were straight feet, and the sole of their foot was like the sole of a calf's foot, and they sparkled like the appearance of glowing brass. 18. And they had the hands of a man under their wings on their 4 sides, and they had faces, and wings on the 4 sides. 19. And the wings of one were joined to the wings of another. They turned not when they went, but every one went straight forward. 110. And as for the likeness of their faces, there was the face of a man, and the face of a lion on the right side of all the 4, and the face of an ox on the left side of all the 4, and the face of an eagle over all the 4. 111. And their faces, and their wings were stretched upward, 2 wings of every one were joined, and 2 covered their bodies. 112. And every one of them went straight forward, whither the impulse of the Spirit was to go, thither they went, and they turned not when they went. 113. And as for the likeness of the living creatures, their appearance was like that of burning coals of fire, and like the appearance of lamps. This was the vision running to and fro in the midst of the living creatures, a bright fire, and lightning going forth from the fire. 114. And the living creatures ran and returned, like flashes of lightning. 115. Now as I beheld the living creatures, there appeared upon the earth by the living creatures 1 wheel with 4 faces. 116. And the appearance of the wheels, and the work of them was like the appearance of the sea, and the 4 had all one likeness, and their appearance and their work was as it were a wheel in the midst of a wheel. 117. When they went by their 4 parts, and they turned not when they went. 118. The wheels had also a size, and a height, and a dreadful appearance, and the whole body was full of eyes round about all the 4. 119. And when the living creatures went, the wheels also went together by them, and when the living creatures were lifted up from the earth, the wheels also were lifted up with them. 120. Whithersoever the Spirit went, thither as the Spirit went, the wheels also were lifted up with all, and followed it, for the Spirit of life was in the wheels. 121. When those went, these went, and when those stood, these stood, and when those were lifted up from the earth, the wheels were lifted up together, and followed them, for the Spirit of life was in the wheels. 122. And over the heads of the living creatures was the likeness of the firmament, the appearance of crystal terrible to behold, and stretched out over their heads above. 123. And under the firmament were their wings straight, the one toward the other, every one with 2 wings covered his body, and the other was covered in like manner. 124. And I heard the noise of their wings, like the noise of many waters, as it were the voice of the Most High God when they walked. It was like the voice of a multitude, like the noise of an army, and when they stood, the wings were let down. 125. For when a voice came from above the firmament, that was over their heads, they stood, and let down the wings. 126. And above the firmament that was over their heads, was the likeness of a throne, as the appearance of the sapphire stone, and upon the likeness of the throne, was the likeness of the appearance of a man above upon it. 127. And I saw as it were the resemblance of amber as the appearance of fire within it round about from his loins and upward, and from his loins downward, I saw as it were the resemblance of fire shining round about. 128. As the appearance of the rainbow when it is in a cloud on a rainy day, this was the appearance of the brightness round about.